Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to my channel, Beagles Games Guitars. In today's video, we're going to be looking at my top 5 favorite games by Stonemaier Games. Okay, so if you watched my top 5 Uwe Rosenberg games, you'll see that I did 2 runner-ups in addition to the top 5, so I'll be doing that as well for the Stonemaier games. I will also be providing 3 pros and 3 cons for each of these games. Even though I like them a lot, I do realize that a lot of people don't like them, especially my number 1, which we'll get to soon. So let's start with those runner-ups here. My number 7 Uwe Rosenberg game, my first runner-up, is Rolling Realms. And the reason it is only number 7 is that it's not quite a big enough game for me. Even though I play solo, the 2 players, I do like really big, extravagant resource management games. In this one, Rolling Realms does have its resources, but it's more so in the luck of the roll. And I'm not the biggest fan of luck games, but I do appreciate how meta this game is, in that it has its own Rolling Realms rolling realm, and he is now branching out and doing other artists such as Uwe Rosenberg and then the people who did Honey Buzz, the Elf Creek games. And I think there's some more to come too, so I'm very excited to see the other promos that are coming out in the next year. But that is my number 7, Rolling Realms. Coming in at number 6, which was recently in my top 5, but it got bumped for a reason that just recently happened. I don't have a physical copy, but it is Pendulum. The reason Pendulum just didn't quite make the cut is that I realized that it is a time game, and I've noticed that a lot of the people who play games just want to sit back and analyze everything before they take their turn, and Pendulum is not that kind of game. You have only so much time to choose your actions and how to spend your resources. I operate very well under stress. That's my work environment, unfortunately. So I'm very good at managing this game while playing it. I've only played with my wife in the solo, and I usually stomp her in this game only, because I'm very good at managing my time under stress. So that is my number 6 game, Pendulum. Alrighty, coming in at number 5 is this monstrosity back here, Wingspan, specifically the Asia Duet mode. And the reason I'm saying that is because a duet mode adds a new layer of depth and complexity to the game. So Wingspan Asia is designed specifically for 1 to 2 players. It adds more complexity because of the duet board. There's another area that you're having to have control of with 1 contiguous space, which will give you more points at the end of the game. And it also gives you bonuses such as eggs, bird cards, and resources. So that's a new, nice addition for 2 players. It's also very easy to integrate the new cards into the actual base game, which I haven't done yet, but I do see the potential for having it interact more with the players around you, because I think a downside to Wingspan, the base game, is that it's too much of a multiplayer solitaire game where you're not really having to pay attention to the people around you. You can just do your own thing. There are occasional cards that'll give everybody a resource, but it doesn't feel as competitive, I would say. I do like competitiveness in games, and Wingspan kind of lacks that. I guess a couple more downsides would be that the duet mode is only designed for 1 to 2 players. I kind of wish it would be for 3 players, go up to 3. That'd be nice to have that board and make it even tighter, because at the end of the game there is spaces that are open, so I could see a potential for it to upgrade into a 3-player game. And then the flock mode, I've played Wingspan at 5 players, and it's a long game, especially with new players who don't know how to play. It's a long game, and I don't see a need for 6 or 7 players. I know 2 players go at the same time, so it's essentially having like 2 3-player pods, but it's still a long game, and it kind of has even more of a disconnect, I feel like, because you're going to be separated into those 2 pods where each pod has their own dice and their own bird cards. So there's less of a competitive feel where you want to steal that bird card before someone else does. Anyways, that is my number 5, Wingspan Asia Duet Mode. Coming in at number 4 might be a little bit of a surprise here. Maybe not with number 2, but My Little Scythe. Most of these games I've already played on my channel, so it's not a shocker whenever you see these probably. But the reason I like My Little Scythe here is that it's family friendly. I've been able to bring it to the table with people who don't even play games, and it's very easy to teach. And a good thing is that just because I know the game, I don't think I've won a game that I've played with my friends and family. Non-gamers will win this game. You don't really need to know how you're playing. I have literally had the winner say, I don't know what I was doing the entire time, but I won. So it's also a good segue into the actual full-blown scythe, because there's a lot of elements that are in My Little Scythe that are just upgraded and cranked up volume 11 on Scythe. So it's a good segue into the real Scythe. I guess a couple of the cons is that it has a very kiddie theme. Of course, it's catered toward kids. So I guess a lot of hardcore gamers wouldn't want to bring this to the table or even buy it. I will admit my wife was hesitant on me getting this game, thinking that we'll never play it, but it's ended up being one of her favorite games, and she will gladly play it with people who don't play board games that often, because there is a struggle sometimes whenever you're trying to show people who don't play games a serious game. There's always this hesitation that I think they're afraid of failure, and they're afraid of learning something new. And My Little Scythe is very easy, and it's something that if you have a couple people who know how to play, about the time it gets to their turn, they know what they're doing essentially. There's only 4 things that you can do. And another con to this game is that I guess it can be kind of redundant. Since there's only 4 things you can do, you feel like you're doing the same thing over and over again, and it gets kind of boring, especially towards the end game. I've noticed that there's kind of a slog where you're sitting there having almost like an analysis paralysis moment where you're like, what do I do, and what would be the next best option? Because this is my last turn, it feels kind of pointless to even do anything because I'm not going to get another trophy out. What's the point? And I do see that last turn being kind of an issue with this game. But that is my number 4, My Little Scythe. Number 3 is a game that I don't have with me currently. It's in storage. I didn't sell it, obviously. And that is Euphoria. Euphoria is kind of a unique game in my opinion, because I haven't played many games where you actually use dice as workers. And I think this is one of the first games that integrated or even used dice as workers, and their number represents their intelligence, which I think is very smart because there's different action spaces on the board, and depending on your worker's intelligence, you'll reap certain rewards. So there's a lot of replayability in this game, even with the different factions as well as the dice, because you could have the same faction roll different numbers on your dice, and you have to play your game differently depending on every dice roll. And then the player count, it goes up to 6. It's hard to find 6-player games. I feel like this one will be okay at 6 players. I've played only at 2 solo, and then I played a 2-player with the solo, because you actually can play 2-player against the automas. It makes it a 4-player game. And you feel like you're playing a full game at 2 players. Unfortunately, you need the expansion to kind of scale the game. They have the Ignorance is Bliss expansion, which you need for the solo, so that's another downside. And it also fixes some of the issues that were with the factions, and it introduces the factionless faction. So it's kind of a downside that you need. I think it's like a $20 or $30 expansion just to kind of complete this game. But it is a game that I really enjoy, and I don't feel like I regretted paying for the expansion. And one thing that I've been wanting for this game, and I think it was available for Kickstarter, which I wasn't into the hobby when this game was kickstarted, and that is a grayscale board. I've noticed, and just my opinion, that this particular map is very busy. I feel like there's a lot going on, and it's really hard to digest, and I think it would overwhelm new players. And the grayscale board only has like the action areas in color, and I think that would really help jump out the action areas versus the background art, because it feels very flat and you're just kind of looking at everything and it mushes and blends in. But that is my number 3, Euphoria. Oh, I'm way down here. Okay, coming in at number 2 is Scythe. And you can see that I really like it because I have the legendary box. Let me put it back away. So, Scythe was my favorite Stonemaier game of all time until recently, and we'll go over number 1 in a minute. But I just fell in love with Scythe the first time I played it. I saw it on the shelf and I was like, what is that? The artwork was awesome. It really drew me in. And then whenever you open the board and look at the map, you're just like, wow, there's a lot going on. But at the same time, it just kind of feels thematic, and it really, I guess, connected with me. I kind of do like the whole mech aspect. It's a huge and epic game, but it's very easy to play. There's really only 8 things that you're doing, and you can only do 2 of them at a time in different combinations, of course, depending on your player mat. But it's a very, I guess, cut and dry game in that you're only doing certain actions, and it's very tight and mechanical because of that. So you do have to really plan ahead, and there is a potential for other players to kind of wreck your plans, but thankfully you can kind of adjust. I would say a downside, especially for new players, is being able to recover from getting attacked or someone stealing your resources or scaring away your workers. You definitely have to figure out, oh, how do I come back from this? Future me popping in here, I forgot to mention on the Scythe that there is kind of this over analysis and over strategy that happens with this game. I've seen forums where people go play by play, turn by turn on how to win in the fewest amount of turns, and I feel like that just takes the fun out of the game, that you're no longer just playing on a whim, you're following a very specific strategy, and it just takes away from the fun and overall experience with other players. Another complaint that I've seen just on online forums, and it's happened a couple times whenever I'm playing, is that 6-star game end condition, where the moment that 6th star is out, the game ends. There could be, I feel like the person going next is always like, I was that close to getting my star out too. The expansion, the Win Gambit, fixes that with these different in-game condition tiles, but I feel like you're kind of going through a paywall to fix that problem. So if you don't like that the game ends after 6 stars, you might consider getting the Win Gambit. I'm actually not a big fan of the Win Gambit. I feel like the ships kind of sit there. I haven't found a way to utilize them, so I really do avoid using the Win Gambit. And that's kind of an issue I'm leading into, is that there's a lot of expansions and add-ons for this game. As you saw, I have the giant legendary box with the realistic resources and the promos and the upgraded plastic and the metal coins and the modular board and the bigger board, which won't even fit on a standard table, let alone like this tiny little Walmart table that I've been playing on. So you can fall down a rabbit hole of buying stuff for this game, but it is a super fun game, and I'll play it anytime someone mentions you want to play Scythe. So that is my number 2, Scythe. Alrighty, guys and gals, you've made it to number 1, or you just skipped all the way to the end just like you did on the Uwe Rosenberg. But let me preface my number 1 by saying it wasn't always my number 1. Scythe was, and I can't explain why I like this game. There's something about it that's just fun. It's just an integrated fun in this game. And it's not viticulture. Not viticulture. Sorry, viticulture does not make my top 5. It's Tapestry. I know. Tapestry gets a lot of flack for its unbalanced civilizations, which there have been adjustments, and there's still ongoing adjustments. So that can be kind of a downside to this game, is that you have to go onto a website just to even have the adjustments to play the game to make it feel like it's even fair. But there's something fun about this game. There's combos that you can potentially have with the tapestry cards and the resources, and going down the tracks at the right time. Sitting there and kind of scoping out, ooh, if I go down the technology track here, I can get that card, which will upgrade this one. Or if I go down the military and get this building, I can get a resource. And it's just cool to be able to visualize and attack whenever you're going to go down a certain track. Maybe that's what's so fun about it, is that there is a lot of replayability. All the civilizations that come with the expansions add more so to the replayability, because you could have a different capital, a different player mat, and then the players can just play differently too. It's fun. Some people could play aggressive and go down the military track and just conquer, 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 while you're sitting back and just exploring and not even conquering at all. But yeah, it's a super fun game. I do have the Arts and Architecture expansion, which I think completes this game. I can see an issue with 5 players. It's long to begin with. It's going to be super long at 5 players. But there was only 4 tracks in the original game, and if all the first 4 players decide to go down this one track, the 5th player is always playing catch-up. And there's an arch track in the 5th one, so they could pick that track and go down it. So I feel like that makes up the 5th player being always behind. The expansions do make the game. I feel like just the base game of this is not quite enough. I won't play it without the arts track anymore. Whenever I teach someone, I'm just going to go straight into it, because I feel like it's such a easy to integrate aspect of the game that there's no point in taking it out. That's just me. So I guess the biggest downside about this game I've noticed is that the last few turns that you take, the really big turns, and then once you run out of resources, you're kind of just like looking around. You almost have like an analysis paralysis kind of moment. Like, what can I do with this one little resource? Is it even worth it? So there is kind of that last dead turn where it almost feels anticlimactic and not quite epic like some games, because you're building up and you're going to have this huge combo, but then you just kind of putter out with one resource left and you're like, oh, I can't even use it. So that is my number 1 game, Tapestry. I have played, I think, all of these games on my channel except for Pendulum. I've been wanting to get that to the channel, but I kind of was plagued with filming issues, so one day it'll show up on the channel. All right. That was my top 5 with my 2 runner-ups, Stonemaier Games. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.